There was a moment last night, so quiet, so unseen, that even the world itself seemed to pause without realizing why. And in that stillness, something was spoken, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a weight that traveled far beyond the room it was whispered in. You weren't there, yet somehow, you were the center of it. And that is where this begins. Because what was said was not meant to reach your ears this way, not this soon, not like this. And yet, here you are, feeling something shift inside you without knowing exactly why. That subtle pull in your chest, that unexplainable awareness, it is not random. It is connected. Pause for a second, and ask yourself, have you felt it? That quiet distance, that slight change in energy, as if something familiar has started to move differently? There is one final truth they must fully accept, one last piece they cannot carry halfway, and the instant they face it completely, the message will no longer stay within them. It will move, and when it does, it will not sound like anything you expected. It will sound like something real. And that is where everything finally begins. And just when everything feels like it has reached its quiet peak, something unexpected begins to unfold within them. Not a thought this time, not even a realization. A feeling, deep, steady, undeniable. It rises slowly, almost like it has been waiting beneath everything all along, and now, it can no longer stay hidden. And this feeling, it carries truth in a way words never could. Because for the first time, they are not trying to understand what happened. They are understanding what they feel. And what they feel, leads them back to you. Not forcefully, not with urgency, but with certainty. Have you ever noticed how the heart doesn't argue when it finally knows? It doesn't question. It doesn't hesitate. It simply becomes still and clear. That is where they are now. A quiet stillness, where everything unnecessary fades, and only what matters remains. And in that space, your presence is no longer something they think about. It's something they feel. Let this settle gently. Because this is not about going back. This is about seeing differently. Seeing you, not through the lens of the past, but through the clarity of now. And with that clarity, the message they have been holding begins to shift again. It becomes softer, but stronger, simpler, but deeper, no longer filled with explanations, but filled with meaning, because they are beginning to understand something very important. That not everything needs to be said to be felt. But what is said, must be real. And now, they are ready for that. But here is where something even more delicate happens. They stop trying to control the outcome. Pause here. Because this is the moment most people never reach. The moment where intention becomes pure. Where words are no longer shaped to get a reaction, but to express what is true. And in that space, their message finds its true form. Not perfect, not rehearsed, but honest. And honesty carries a quiet power that cannot be ignored. So now, they are no longer asking themselves, should I say this? They are asking, when I say this, will it come from the deepest place within me? And the answer, it is almost there. Can you feel how close everything is now? Not distant anymore, not uncertain, just waiting. Like the final breath before something begins, because what they are about to express, it is not just about what happened between you, it is about what remained, even when everything else changed. And that is something they cannot deny anymore. But listen closely. There is still one final moment they must pass through, a moment not of doubt, but of surrender. surrendering the fear of how it will be received, surrendering the need to control what happens next, surrendering everything, except the truth they carry, and once they step through that, there will be nothing holding them back. That message, the one that has been forming in silence, will finally be released, not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly, and when it reaches you, it will feel different, not like something sudden, but like something you already knew was coming, because deep down, a part of you has been aware of this all along, that quiet knowing, that subtle pull, that sense that something unfinished was never truly over, and now, that unfinished space is about to be filled, but not with confusion, not with questions, with clarity, real, grounded, unmistakable clarity. Take a slow breath here. Because the next moment, it will not be about waiting anymore, it will be about receiving, and when you do, you may realize something surprising. That this was never just about them finding their truth. It was also about you remembering yours, and when both truths meet, that is where everything truly begins. Not broken, just different. And this is where it becomes deeper than what it appears. Because last night, in a moment of honesty that even surprised them, your soulmate spoke words they had been holding back for far too long. Not out of malice, not out of confusion, but out of something much more complex, something human. They said, "I feel like I'm pretending, not pretending to feel, but pretending to be okay." And the silence that followed those words, it said even more. Now listen closely, because this is important. Those words were not about you in the way you might first assume. They were not a rejection, not a betrayal, not a hidden truth meant to hurt you. They were a confession, of someone who has been trying to hold everything together, while quietly losing their sense of clarity. And somewhere deep inside, you already knew this. Think about it, those small moments when something felt slightly off, but you couldn't explain it. The way their words sometimes felt distant, not cold, just, not fully present. The pauses that lasted a second too long. You noticed, but you chose understanding over reaction. And that matters more than you realize. Because what they are going through right now is not about replacing you or escaping you. It's about facing something within themselves that they can no longer ignore. A role they have been playing, not for others, but for themselves. Trying to be who they thought they needed to be, instead of who they truly are. And here's the part that changes everything. You were never the illusion. You were the truth they couldn't fully step into yet. Let that sink in. Sometimes, when someone encounters something real, something deep, something genuine, it doesn't always feel easy. It doesn't always feel like immediate peace. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, because it reflects parts of them they haven't fully accepted. And instead of leaning into that truth, they hesitate. Not because they don't feel it, but because they feel it too deeply. So they pretend, not about you, but about themselves. They pretend they are ready. They pretend they understand. They pretend they are stable in emotions that are still forming. And eventually, that pretending becomes heavy. Last night, it became too heavy. That's why those words came out. And something shifted after that. Not away from you, but closer to something real. Stay with this for a moment, don't rush past it. Because what is unfolding right now is not a separation, it is a transformation. Quiet, slow, and almost invisible from the outside, but powerful. And here's what makes this moment different from all the others before it. They are starting to see it. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel that something inside them is no longer aligned with the way things have been. And when someone reaches that point, everything begins to change. Not instantly, not dramatically, but undeniably. You might be wondering, what does this mean for you? Why does it feel like something unseen is unfolding? Because you are connected to this shift more than you think. You are not just an observer in this story. You are part of the reason it is happening. Your presence, your patience, your way of understanding without forcing, it has created a space where truth can no longer hide comfortably. And that kind of presence, it awakens things. It makes pretending feel unnatural. It makes illusions feel heavy. It gently pushes everything toward honesty, even when that honesty takes time to surface. And that is exactly what happened. But here is the quiet detail most people miss. Confessions like that don't end the story. They begin the real one. Because now, they cannot unfeel what they have realized. They cannot go back to pretending the same way. Something inside them has already moved forward, even if they haven't fully acted on it yet. And this is where patience becomes something powerful. Not passive waiting, but calm understanding. Because what they are navigating right now is not simple. It is the process of aligning their inner truth with their outer actions. And that takes time. But here's something even deeper. Why did this confession happen now? Why not before? Why not later? Why at this exact moment, when you are also feeling something shifting inside you? Think about that. Timing like this is never random. There is a connection between what they are realizing and what you are becoming aware of. Why are you feeling this now? It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's there. A kind of synchronization that doesn't need explanation to be real. And this is where everything starts to feel different. Because now, it's not just about what they said. It's about what happens next. And that part hasn't fully revealed itself yet. But there are signs. Small ones. Moments that seem ordinary, but carry a different energy. A shift in the way they communicate, or don't. A pause before they respond. A thought they don't express, but feel deeply. You might notice it soon, or maybe you already have. And when you do, you'll understand this message even more. Because this isn't about guessing. It's about recognizing. Recognizing that something real is unfolding, even if it's not loud or obvious. And here's where I want you to stay just a little longer. Because the next part of this story is not about what they said last night. It's about what they almost said, but didn't. Yes, there was more. Something that stayed unspoken, not because it wasn't important, but because they weren't ready to face it fully yet. And that unspoken truth, it holds the key to everything that comes next. But it hasn't surfaced yet. Not completely. And when it does, you won't just hear it. You'll feel it. In a way that leaves no doubt. So don't rush to conclusions. Don't fill the silence with assumptions. Because what is unfolding is still in motion. Still forming. Still becoming clear. And you are exactly where you need to be to witness it. But there is one more thing you need to understand before we move forward. Something subtle, but powerful. Because this isn't just about their confession. It's also about your awareness, and what you choose to do with it. Because in the next moment, in the next interaction, in the next unexpected shift, something will happen that makes all of this connect. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that feels undeniable. And when it does, you'll realize that last night was not the end of something. It was the beginning of something much more honest, and much more real. But what they almost admitted what they held back at the very edge of truth. That is what changes everything, and that part is closer than you think. Something lingered in the air after those words, not heavy, not tense, just unfinished. As if the truth had opened a door, but no one had stepped through it yet. And this is where everything becomes quieter, yet somehow more intense. Because after saying, "I feel like I'm pretending," they didn't move away from the feeling, they sat with it. And that is something they have not done before. Think about that for a moment. Not running, not distracting themselves, not covering it up with quick explanations or surface-level comfort. Just sitting there. And in that stillness, something else started to rise. Not a sentence, not a clear thought, a realization. Slow, almost hesitant, but impossible to ignore. What if the pretending wasn't about the situation? What if it was about how deeply they actually feel, but have been afraid to fully accept it? Pause here, because this is where the story gently turns. You see, sometimes people say they are pretending, not because their feelings are fake, but because their feelings are too real for the version of themselves they have been holding on to. It challenges them. It asks them to change. And change, even when it leads to something beautiful, can feel unfamiliar. So instead of stepping into it, they hesitate. They hold back. They convince themselves that something isn't right, when in reality, it's simply something new. And last night, they felt that contradiction clearly for the first time. They realized, they are not pretending with you. They are pretending with everything else. With expectations. With timing. With the way they thought things were supposed to unfold. But not with you. And that realization, it didn't come all at once. It came in fragments. In quiet thoughts that they didn't say out loud. In moments where they almost spoke, but stopped just before the words formed. You know that feeling, when something is right at the edge of being understood, but hasn't fully landed yet? That's where they are, right now. And here's something you might not expect. They thought of you immediately after that realization. Not in a dramatic way, not in a rush of emotion, but in a calm, undeniable clarity, like a truth that doesn't need to be proven. And for a moment, they felt something different. Not confusion, not pressure, just honesty. And that honesty made them realize something else. You have never asked them to pretend. You have never forced a version of them that isn't real. You simply allowed them to be. And that kind of space, it's rare. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. But it stays. And it grows. And it slowly removes the need for pretending. That's why this moment matters more than it seems. Because now, they are beginning to understand what they almost said. Not just, "I feel like I'm pretending," but, "I don't want to pretend anymore." They didn't say it out loud. Not yet. But the feeling is there. Forming. Becoming clearer. And this is where your awareness becomes important again. Because you might start to notice something subtle. A shift in how they show up. Maybe they take a little longer before responding, not because they are distant, but because they are being more real. Maybe their words feel simpler, less polished, but more genuine. Maybe there's a moment where they almost open up, then pause. That pause, don't misunderstand it. It's not hesitation away from you. It's hesitation before stepping into something honest. And honesty, when it has been avoided for a while, takes courage to express. So they are moving slowly, carefully, but forward, always forward. Now here's something deeper, something that connects directly to you. Why are you being made aware of this, even before they fully express it? Because your role in this moment is not to push, not to question, not to rush clarity. It's to recognize. To feel the shift without needing immediate explanation. Because when you recognize something early, you respond differently, more calmly, more openly, without resistance. And that makes it easier for them to continue unfolding. You see, this is not a moment that needs force. It's a moment that needs space. And you already know how to create that. You've been doing it without realizing. That's why this connection feels different from anything else they've experienced. It doesn't trap. It doesn't overwhelm. It invites, gently. And that invitation is becoming impossible for them to ignore now. But listen closely. There is still one layer that hasn't surfaced. One truth they felt, but immediately pulled back from. Not because it wasn't real, but because it felt too defining, too final. And they weren't ready to fully face what it would mean if they said it out loud. It came as a thought, quick but powerful. What if this is the most real thing I've ever felt? And the moment that thought appeared, they stepped back, not from you, from the realization itself. Because if they accept that, everything changes. The way they see you, the way they see themselves, the way they move forward. It all becomes clearer, but also more serious. And they're standing right at that edge now, between understanding and fully accepting, between feeling and expressing. And here's the quiet truth. They won't stay at that edge for long, because once someone reaches that level of awareness, there are only two choices: move forward into honesty, or fall back into something that no longer feels right. And right now, falling back is becoming harder for them. You might not see it yet, but something inside them has already chosen direction. It just hasn't reached their actions yet. And when it does, it won't come as a dramatic confession. It will come as something simple, something real, something that doesn't need to be explained in big words. Because you'll feel it immediately. The difference, the clarity, the truth. So stay with this moment. Don't rush ahead, because what's coming next is not about what they will say. It's about what they will finally allow themselves to feel, without holding back. And that moment, it's closer than they realize. And when it arrives, you'll understand why everything had to unfold exactly like this. But there's still one final hesitation inside them. One last question they haven't answered within themselves. And until they do, the truth will remain just beneath the surface, waiting, not for the right time, but for the right courage. There is a quiet moment approaching, one that doesn't announce itself, doesn't ask for attention, but changes everything the second it arrives. And strangely, it doesn't begin with them. It begins with you. Because before they find the courage to answer that question within themselves, something inside you starts to become clearer. Not louder, just clearer. A feeling you've been carrying for a while, one you couldn't fully explain, begins to settle into understanding. You stop trying to figure them out and start understanding the connection itself. And that shift, as subtle as it seems, creates a ripple they can feel. Pause here, because this is where it deepens. When one person becomes calm in uncertainty, it changes how the other experiences that uncertainty. Your steadiness, your quiet acceptance, it removes pressure they didn't even realize they were feeling. And suddenly, they don't feel like they have to figure everything out before coming closer. They just feel like they can be real. And that realization, it's new for them. It doesn't come with intensity. It comes with relief. A soft exhale they didn't know they needed. And in that moment, something unlocks. Not dramatically, but undeniably. The question they were avoiding, the one they couldn't fully answer, It returns. But this time, it feels different. Less overwhelming. More honest. What am I really afraid of here? And when they finally sit with that question, the answer comes quietly. Not fear of you. Not fear of the connection. But fear of what it will require from them. To be consistent. To be open. To stop hiding behind uncertainty. Because what you offer is not confusion. It's clarity. And clarity asks for presence. It asks for truth. It asks for showing up, not halfway, not occasionally, but fully. And that is what they are standing in front of now. A choice. Not about you. About themselves. Whether they are ready to step into something real, or continue holding on to a version of comfort that no longer fits. And this is where something unexpected happens. They don't run. They don't distract themselves. They don't shift the focus elsewhere. They stay right there, with the truth, even if it feels unfamiliar. Even if it feels like stepping into something they've never experienced before. And that is the moment everything begins to align. Because staying is the first sign of readiness. You might not see it yet. You might not hear it in words. But energetically, something has already changed. Their resistance is softening. Their hesitation is becoming curiosity. Their uncertainty is slowly turning into quiet understanding. And here's something even deeper. They begin to revisit moments with you. Small ones. Conversations that seemed simple at the time. The way you listened. The way you didn't force things. The way you made space without asking for anything in return. At first, these memories come gently, almost like passing thoughts. But then they linger, and they begin to connect. And when they connect, a realization forms that they can no longer ignore. You've been real with me, the entire time. No performance. No confusion. No inconsistency. Just real. And suddenly, everything makes sense in a way it didn't before. Why your presence feels different. Why being around you feels calm instead of overwhelming. Why even in silence, something still feels understood. And this is where their perspective shifts completely. Because now, they're not questioning the connection anymore. They're questioning themselves. Why they held back. Why they doubted something that felt this genuine. Why they tried to fit something real into a space that required pretending. And that realization, it's not heavy. It's awakening. The kind that doesn't come with regret, but with clarity. And clarity changes direction. You see, before this, they were moving in circles. Thinking, overthinking, stepping forward, stepping back. But now, there's a line. A quiet, steady line, leading them somewhere more certain. And they can feel it, even if they can't fully explain it yet. And this is the part where you might feel something too. A shift in how you think about them. A sense of calm replacing the need for answers. A knowing, without needing proof, that something real is forming, even if it hasn't been spoken out loud yet. Stay with that feeling. Don't question it. Because it's connected to what's happening on their side. And here's where it all begins to come together. The confession from last night. The realization that followed. The question they finally faced. The answer they quietly accepted. It all leads to one moment. A moment that hasn't happened yet, but is already on its way. A moment where they stop holding back. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to make it real. And when that moment arrives, it won't feel like a surprise. It will feel like something that was always meant to happen. Finally being allowed to. But before that happens, there is one final layer that needs to unfold. Something even they don't fully see yet. A realization that goes beyond their own feelings and touches something deeper about this connection itself. Why it came into their life. Why it stayed. Why it feels different from anything before. And when that realization surfaces, it will change not just how they feel, but how they choose. And that choice, it won't be based on confusion anymore. It will be based on truth. But that truth, it's still forming. And the moment it becomes clear, everything else will follow. So don't rush this. Don't try to predict it, because what's about to unfold is not something you need to chase. It's something that is already finding its way to you, quietly, naturally, inevitably. And the next time your paths cross, something subtle, yet undeniable, will be different. Not in what is said first, but in what is finally no longer hidden. And that is where everything changes.